It all began on a bright Saturday morning, the kind of day that promised peace and quiet. Birds chirped cheerfully, the sun cast a warm glow, and I was savoring my coffee on the porch, basking in the suburban calm I'd grown to love. That is, until I spotted her, Linda, the new neighbor who would soon turn my tranquil existence into a bizarre ordeal. She wasn't just any neighbor. She was the Linda, a master of HOA regulations who wielded them like a feudal overlord, sniffing out the tiniest infractions and spinning them into neighborhood dramas. And, as luck would have it, I became her next target. At first, I wasn't concerned. I'd lived in this neighborhood for years without a single complaint. My house was neat, my lawn manicured, and I kept to myself. But Linda didn't need a real reason. She craved control. It started subtly. A polite note about my trash bins lingering curbside 10 minutes past pickup time. A passing remark that my porch light didn't meet HOA standards. Minor nitpicks, I thought. Then she ramped it up. I'll never forget the moment I realized she meant business. I was pulling into my driveway after a long day, eager to unwind, when I saw it, a massive orange cone blocking my path. Beside it stood Linda, arms crossed, smirking like a daytime TV antagonist. I rolled down my window, bewildered. "Excuse me, Linda, is there a reason you're blocking my driveway?" I asked. Her smirk widened. "Oh, I'm just enforcing HOA rules. Your driveway, per the updated guidelines, isn't up to standard." I blinked. "What updated guidelines?" She produced a printed HOA booklet, flipping to a page that looked suspiciously newly added. "As of last week's meeting, all driveways must meet the new aesthetic criteria. Yours, unfortunately, doesn't." She gestured at my perfectly ordinary concrete driveway. I laughed, assuming it was a joke. "Linda, this driveway's been here for years. No one's ever complained." She didn't flinch. "Well, I have." That's when it hit me. She was dead serious. I took a deep breath, keeping my cool. "Okay, so what do I need to do?" She beamed, clearly relishing the moment. "You'll need to file a renovation request and bring it up to HOA standards. Until then, you can't use it." I stared. "So where am I supposed to park?" She shrugged. "Not my problem." I should have seen it coming. Linda had been itching for a way to flex her authority, and now she had me in her sights. Worse, the HOA board was her puppet. At the next meeting, I hoped for reason but got blank stares and nods of agreement with every word she uttered. They unanimously upheld her rule. Just like that, my driveway was off limits. For days, I parked blocks away, trudging home with groceries while Linda sipped tea on her porch, watching me struggle. It wasn't just the hassle, it was the principle. Giving in would only embolden her. What was next? My mailbox. My door color? I needed a plan. I tried reasoning with her one last time, approaching her porch calmly. "Linda, let's be sensible. My driveway isn't hurting anyone." She sighed theatrically. "Rules are rules." "But they're absurd rules," I countered. She smiled sweetly. "Then maybe you should move." That was it, the breaking point. If she wanted to play dirty, I'd play smarter. As I walked back home, a wild, brilliant, and perfectly legal idea struck me. If Linda wanted to block my driveway, fine, I wouldn't need it. I'd build something so outrageous, so ingenious, that it would solve my problem and put her in her place. I was going to construct a private bridge over her house. That night, sitting in my living room, I refined the concept. A bridge, elevated, spanning from my property over Linda's house to the street. It sounded insane, but the more I thought about it, the more flawless it seemed. She'd banned my driveway, but she hadn't said a word about the airspace above her property. If the HOA only governed ground-level structures, I'd be in the clear. Now, I just had to make it happen. First, I needed expertise. I called my friend Mark, a civil engineer, and posed the oddest question of his career. "Hey, how much would it cost to build a private bridge over someone's house?" After a long pause, he asked, "Are you kidding?" I explained the saga, and once he stopped laughing, he grew intrigued. "Theoretically, it's doable. You'd need sturdy support beams, likely anchored on your land, extending over to the other side. Steel and concrete could hold it. But, are you serious?" I was beyond serious. The thought of Linda's reaction when I drove over her house fueled my resolve. I asked Mark to sketch a basic design, simple but solid. He agreed, still half convinced I was joking. Next, I dove into the HOA bylaws, hunting for any clause that could derail me. To my delight, I found the perfect loophole. The HOA only regulated permanent ground-level structures. As long as my bridge didn't touch Linda's property, it was beyond their reach. Then came the materials, steel beams, concrete, and a lot of patience. I ordered everything in small batches, claiming it was for a home renovation, dodging Linda's nosy inquiries. When she asked what I was up to, I smiled. Just a little home improvement. She eyed me suspiciously but didn't push. The real hurdle was permits. The HOA couldn't stop me, but the city could. I spent days filing paperwork, meeting zoning officials, and ticking every legal box. It was tedious, but I got the approval. Construction began, and the neighborhood quickly took notice. Workers arrived with heavy equipment, drilling into my property for a foundation. The noise drew Linda first. She stormed over, shrieking, "You can't just build whatever you want in an HOA community." I handed her my permits. "Actually, I can." She snatched them, scanning furiously. When she saw they were legit, her face flushed red. "This isn't right," she stammered, but she knew she was powerless. As the bridge took shape, neighbors rallied behind me. I wasn't the only one Linda had tormented. Fines for trivial violations and endless nitpicking had worn everyone down. My bridge became a rebellion, and people loved it, some even watching the progress like a live show. Linda, meanwhile, unraveled. She filed HOA complaints, useless since I wasn't breaking rules. She called the city, but the permits held. She even tried scaring off the workers, who ignored her. Every time she flailed on her lawn, yelling about unacceptable this or that, I couldn't help but grin. One evening, standing on my half-finished bridge, I saw its shadow fall over her roof, a constant taunt. Even if she changed the rules, it'd be too late. My bridge was here to stay. Linda grew desperate, spreading rumors it was unsafe, that it'd collapse and ruin her home. No one bought it. The neighborhood had turned on her, and she knew it. When the final reinforcements went up, the bridge was a masterpiece, functional and defiant. I ran my hands over the concrete, savoring the victory. Linda had tried to control me, but she'd only pushed me to outweed her. The night before the big reveal, I parked blocks away and walked up to the bridge. Standing there, born of pure spite, it felt surreal. I pictured Linda's meltdown when I drove over her house. It'd be legendary. At dawn, I got in my car, took a deep breath, and eased onto the bridge. As I crested the top, there she was on her lawn, jaw dropped, eyes blazing. I honked and waved. The bridge worked flawlessly, a smooth ride over her house to the road. I'd done it. I'd beaten her. But Linda wouldn't quit that easily. She was already on her phone, likely calling every authority she could muster. She didn't know I'd planned for this. She could fight, but she'd never win. The war wasn't over, but I'd won the biggest battle yet. As my tires rolled off the bridge, triumph surged through me. The incline, the transition, all perfect. But the real prize was Linda's expression, shock morphing into fury, her fists clenched, her pristine yard below now irrelevant. I'd bypassed her blockade in a way she'd never imagined. I honked twice more, waved again, and watched her scramble for her phone, dialing frantically. I smiled. Let her try. I'd covered every base. That afternoon, parking via my new elevated route, neighbors gathered, amused and impressed. "Unbelievable," said Mr. Carter next door, grinning. "Never thought I'd see someone outsmart her." "You're a legend." Another chuckled. "Linda's probably imploding right now." I shrugged. She asked for it. Within an hour, she stormed over, HOA rulebook in hand, face crimson. "This violates regulations," she screeched, waving the booklet. I leaned against my car. "Which one exactly?" She flipped through it, searching, but found nothing. Finally, she jabbed at a page. "No permanent structures beyond property lines." I nodded. "Right. My bridge doesn't touch yours. It's suspended." She growled. "You can't build over people's houses." I grinned. "Actually, I can. City approved it. Didn't you get the notice?" Her eyes widened. "Notice?" I showed her the zoning approval, sent to the HOA weeks ago. "You're on the list. Check your email." Her face cycled from rage to realization, then back to rage. "This is a nuisance. It's ruining property values." "Funny," I said. I think a private access road boosts value. Trembling, she spat. This isn't over. I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting. I gave her a thumbs up. Knock yourself out. She stomped off, plotting already, but I knew she'd hit a wall. Sure enough, 2 days later, HOA board members started visiting, each with a new tactic. First, Mr. Hayes, the president, tried reason. Let's compromise, he said with a strained smile. Rules are rules. My bridge follows them, I replied. If you'd worked with me instead of letting Linda run rampant, we wouldn't be here. He left, flustered. Next came intimidation, a revised bylaw banning overhead structures over 12 feet. Linda smirked. Just passed. I laughed. You can't enforce retroactive rules. My bridge predates it. Her smirk faded. We'll sue. Go ahead, I said. I'll countersue for harassment. She faltered, but her eyes promised more. That night, I heard clanking outside. Peering out, I saw Linda near a support beam, wrench in hand, unscrewing bolts. She was sabotaging it. I flicked on my flashlight. Linda, what the hell are you doing? She dropped the wrench, stammering, inspecting for safety violations. I pointed at the tool. With that, she froze. I snapped a photo. HOA might like this. Or the police. Vandalism's a crime. She bolted, leaving the wrench. She'd lost, but didn't know it yet. Next morning, she was screeching at board members outside her house, furious from her failure. By noon, a letter appeared on my door. Urgent HOA meeting, unauthorized bridge. I crumpled it, laughing. That evening, Linda opened the meeting with a tirade. This bridge defies our rules and must go. I cut in. It's legal. We've been over this. She pulled out a new rule. No overhead structures over 12 feet. Passed today. I smirked. Retroactive rules don't apply. She snapped. We'll vote to remove it. On what grounds? Silence. Then she tried. It lowers property values. Mrs. Ellis stood. I love it. It's creative. I'm tired of your nonsense rules. Murmurs of agreement followed. Linda's control slipped. She escalated, calling a city inspector. He arrived, checked the bridge, and after an hour, said, no violations. Solid work. Linda, watching, stormed off in a huff. That night, security cameras caught her again, with men and a crowbar. I called the police. They caught her mid-act, tools in hand. This is my neighborhood, she yelled. And that's my property, I said. She was cuffed, charged with trespassing and attempted damage. The HOA dropped her fast, and soon, a moving truck appeared. Linda was gone. The neighborhood relaxed. Freed from her tyranny, it breathed again. My bridge stood, a testament to outlasting petty despots. Sipping a drink on my porch, I watched Life Resume. Mr. Carter nodded. Hell of a fight. I grinned. Worth it. What's next? Toll booth. I laughed. Nah, I'll just enjoy the view.